I interviewed my great-grandma, Rita. She was born in Liverpool in England in April 1933.
I'd say reading and English lessons. Run to the air raid shelters and practice in case we got bombed. What do you say?
So how old were you when the war began?
It began in 1940, so I was 7.
So when she was in primary school, they were
Starting World War II.
Yeah, starting World War II. So we didn't have much playtime. We did a lot of practice running. If you could run home in 2 minutes or 5 minutes, you were allowed to run home when the air raid sirens went. But if you couldn't run home in that time, you had to stay in school and go into the air raid shelters.
That's what the air raid.
I went once to the Isle of Man, which is an island between England and Ireland, and that was because we had a relation that had a guest house there, and we went there in 1939 before the war, and then during the war we went to Wales because we had a cousin who was evacuated there during the war, and we could go and stay with them in Wales. And then at the end of the war we went back to the Isle of Man again.
How long did you stay in Wales for?
Only a week.
Yeah, okay. So that was a holiday, wasn't
Only
it?
a week holiday, yeah, each time.
And did you?
That's all the men got, was a week's holiday.
Did your family go with you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was just a family holiday.
Okay.
In Wales you just climbed around the mountains and wandered up and down the hills and valleys and
Just explored.
explored. Yeah.
Someone we know would like that.
With Eric, my brother. So we went exploring every day. Well, I remember getting the strap across the back of my legs for talking in class when I wasn't supposed to be talking.
What was the scrap? Was
It was a whip.
leather or
It was a
was
whip. The principal give you a whip. And
No, the
that's what-
teacher
Oh.
lifted my skirt up and gave me the strap across the back of my legs.
That's what happened to my teacher.
So was it a leather strap like a belt?
That was like a cane.
Yeah.
And that particular time, that doesn't need to be in here, I wasn't talking, and that hurt more than anything. It was usually me talking,
It's the injustice.
and that stuck. But that's, if we didn't do as we were told in school, we didn't get told twice.
Were there any other punishments?
Well, the whole class might have to stay in, so you got into trouble with the rest of the class because they had to stay in because you were doing the wrong thing. So you lost all your friends because they wanted to go home on time, and because you were naughty they had to stay in. Well, there was my mother, my father, my brother who was older than me, and my sister who was born in 1940, who was just a baby. Dad's name was Frank. Mum's name was Doris Evans, because she was Welsh. Dad was mostly Irish. And then there was my brother Eric, older than me, and Pat was the baby. And during the war, my mother's sister got bombed out twice. Her house got bombed, and my 2 cousins, male cousins, little boys like you now, they had to come and live with us until they got another house. Then they got another house and they left us and went to their new house, and then they got bombed out again, so they came back again.
And that was
but they lived in Liverpool by the docks, where all the ships came in. So the Germans decided they would bomb the ships, and if they missed, they'd bomb the houses. None whatsoever. The only technical thing we had was a ruler.
And
The desks had a lid that lifted up with all your things in, and then the metal come round and made the seat.
yeah.
Yeah. Teachers had a big blackboard and white scratchy chalk. We mainly used pencils until you got a lot older, because of the ink dripping everywhere and causing blotches and needing blotting paper.
Did you use pastels when you were young?
Yes. The end of the war. At Christmas we would get, in our stocking we would get perhaps an orange, an apple, a new penny. A penny was like a cent, and it was always a nice new shiny one. And then we would get one present. Only ever got one present. My father was at work and one of the coal wagons came in, with the coal on top. It come from Wales through sleet and snow and bitter cold. This is a 6-week-old puppy somebody dumped on top. How it survived the ride, I don't know. But my father brought it home in his pocket on his bike. And when he got home, evidently, I was told this, he brings the pup out and shows it to my mother, and she says, "Looks like a lump of corned beef."
And that's how it got its name.
That's how it got its name.
Do you know what kind of dog it was?
I'd say, from the photos I've got of it, it was a Labrador cross.
Yeah.
Always overweight looking,
Yeah.
but it was our dog.
Yeah.
And she died just about halfway through the war, so we never got her.
Yeah.
We have trees down the street, just, trees as big as this. And we had a dog, but all our games were played on the road because there were no cars. And we were saying the other night, we used to play rounders. You a cricket bat and you hit the ball, and then you've got to run round the 4 trees and get back. And we had our dog in the back garden, and the kids had decided to play rounders, so they're coming out in the back gate, they bring the dog out and they'd sit him behind the batsman, and then they'd play rounders for an hour or two, and the dog would get the ball and bring it back, get the ball and bring it back in. And then when they finished, they'd go and open the gate and put the dog back in.
What was your dog's name?
Corned beef. My dad and Eric made me a scooter. I don't know how old I was, but it was out of 2 pram wheels, about that big, and a wooden platform, and it was painted silver, and it was the top thing in the neighbourhood was mine. We had to make our own fun the whole time. We didn't have clubs and things run because there was nobody to run them.
Was there scouting or girl guides at that stage?
Yeah, we did have them, but there was few and far between. There's no men around. I'd leave school and walk about half a mile that way to the library and get some books, and then I'd walk all the way home, and then I'd read the books, and then the next day I would do the same thing and go to the library and take the books back and get some more books, because we didn't have television.
What books?
It used to go, in the summer, it used to stay light until nearly midnight. But in the winter, we used to go to school in the dark in the morning, and it was nearly dark when we came home from school in the afternoon, so we didn't do much. But if a car landed in the street, all the kids would say, "Hey, there's a motor up the street," and everybody'd run out and have a look at the motor. Look in the windows and...
Yeah.
always a teddy bear, never a doll. I always thought every kid should have a teddy bear.
Yeah.
Not a doll, teddy bear.
When did you...
Well, we lived in a council house. Most people had a council house. And they were just built in rows. But everybody had a front garden and a back garden. And in the back garden we kept chooks during the war. And we always had a dog. And then the house itself, we had 3 bedrooms upstairs, a lounge room that was as big as this. Do you want to know what was in it? There was a door to the pantry, a door to the kitchen, there was a piano, and then my father had built a bookcase, and we had a bird cage in between the piano and the book cage. We had a big leather lounge room suite. We had a dining table with 6 chairs. And my mother had a sewing machine, and we had a fire. I tell you what, she moved everything to move around. The things we had in that one room, which would have been as big as this, there would have been. My mother had a greenhouse in the back. In the back garden, the back garden would have been not much bigger than this. We had an air raid shelter dug in, our own air raid shelter. We had a chook pen. We had a cucumber frame for growing cucumbers, and we had a greenhouse for growing tomatoes and lettuce. Opposite where we lived, there was one of the farmers, Lord Derby's estate, and then the farm. The farm was closest to our house, just opposite. And they made the farmers, or asked the farmers, to make allotments. So if you wanted, you could have an allotment, and you paid so much rent a week for this allotment of soil, and then you could grow all your own veggies on it. Mm-hmm. And my brother and my dad grew all our veggies. Mm-hmm. Those houses were small, but they were warm, they were well looked after. There was nothing wrong with them at all. And my father would yell and scream and threaten to kill us both, and we'd shut up very quickly. It was more just verbal discipline. We never got strapped or hit. We got told off, and we pretty much did as we were told.